Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. And please allow me to introduce my guest today. Her and I have been trying to make this happen for a while, and I'm glad to finally welcome her onto the show. Joe, how are we doing?
Hi, Mikey.
It's nice to
I'm
finally
doing
see you.
good. Nice to see you too. It really is. It's been a while.
Yeah, you and I have been talking for quite some time trying to make this happen. But for those that don't know, actually, me and Joe have been chatting for a little close to about half a year now. And we've actually become pretty good friends along the way. She's helped me with some things as well. As you all know, 2021 was a little bit of a rough patch year, but she helped me with some stuff there. People have been asking for her. So probably to the shock and dismay of her. Would you ever expect people wanted to hear from you?
No, I didn't really expect it. No, I was quite surprised to hear from you. But I have heard from a few people over the years that they want to hear what happened. Da da da. Mainly talking about not talking about real world. I'm talking about the Gauntlet. But like loads of people want to hear my version of the story. So
Yeah.
here I am.
Here you are. And we're going to probably get to that too, but I kind of want to give everybody like a little bit of a background. We'll work our way up because there is more to you than just
Cool.
what happened there.
Yeah.
You've got your real world and then you got your pre-real world and we're just going to get right to it from the start, obviously. But I want to start by asking like how have you been recently? I know it's been a while that a lot of people have heard from you and we've of course in the world had the past 2 years have had a pandemic going on. No secret there. So,
Yeah.
are you healthy? Like, is everything fine in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the pandemic was, it is. I mean, it's still pretty daunting. We're still wearing masks here, um, and it still feels a little bit strange. I haven't actually gone out into a big group yet, so I'm waiting to like get out to the cinema or the theater or a concert or something, but I haven't done that yet. So I still, when I get in a big group or like what feels like a bigger group, I
Yeah,
still feel a bit weird.
yeah,
But I'm sure that will go away again soon because summer's heading in and the beaches are going to be full. And um, so, yeah, I mean, I live in Spain now. So
Oh, wow,
we
nice.
just beaches and I'm coastal. So I can walk down, which is nice. So, yeah, everything's been going pretty good. I live a pretty quiet, normal life now. So it's changed a lot from when I was in the US last.
So would you consider yourself more of a beach, sunny, outdoors person, or like indoors kind of movie, show, concert type of girl?
Both.
Both, best of both worlds.
I mean, I love the beach and the hot weather. That's why I live in Spain now,
Yeah,
basically. I lived a lot of years in the mountains before skiing and doing all those things. I haven't done any of that in years. Um, but I definitely like to get out. I mean, definitely the cinema, film, all the arts. I love museums for artwork. I love all those things. I don't live in a big city now, but I've got Valencia really close and Alicante really close, so I can enjoy that kind of culture when I want to. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm sure for the hardcore fans that remember Real World San Francisco, they would remember that you were a big rock climber back then. Any of that in recent years, or have you kind of put that on the back burner?
Gosh, yeah, I think my sport has, or what I do in terms of sport has evolved. Like I haven't rock climbed in a long time. I did do it after Real World for a while, and my brother got into it as well. So when I come back to England, we would go out climbing together and sport climbing mainly, and we did that for a little while. But and I was mountain biking and obviously skiing when I lived in Tahoe in the mountains. But I've moved around a lot, so um, I'm just trying to without like skipping too much. I lived in Santa Barbara for like 7 years, And there I got into yoga, and I started getting to more of kind of growing myself spiritually.
Hmm.
So that whole sport thing took a new path because I was then exploring more yoga and running, and now I do the same, more yoga and running, Zumba.
Yeah, I know
But nothing
yoga's.
real edgy now, nothing real
Yeah,
edgy. But I would do it, I just don't get out, you know?
yeah. I know yoga's kind of like a thing that a lot of people that they do, they almost take on like a spiritual aspect of it. Something about yoga makes them kind of like more zen.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was looking for something in terms of religion at that stage, and spirituality. And I'd explored a little bit of Buddhism before. Um, and I actually met my spiritual master at that time, who is a part of the Hare Krishna movement. And
Hmm.
so, which the Hare Krishna movement, what we follow is called Bhakti Yoga. So it's kind of like what we do in life as yoga, but also there's the physical yoga as well. So since then, I've kind of moved forward, not always doing the right thing, not always
Yeah.
being the right person, but always trying to get back to that place.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how often, if ever, do you think back to that time period when you were, doing shows and then kind of living that LA life with the 15 minutes? How often do you think back to it, if ever?
Um, I mean, it doesn't really come up in my life so much anymore. I guess like I took an MA when I went back to England and I was in uni again. Um, and it came up a bit more in that kind of environment where people are really exploring you and kind of we're pulling all the fun things out of each other's past, you know? So I did get to talk about it a little bit more at that stage and reminisce. Um, and real world obviously was my better experience. So I haven't really looked into Gauntlet yet, apart from
Yeah.
with you, like what we've
Yeah.
talked about and getting into it today. Um, I've never seen it. I still haven't seen it.
Maybe one day you and I'll check it out ourselves when the time's right.
We should. We should.
Yeah.
I think it'll be good. It'll be good. Yeah, because I'm all into understanding the self and
Hmm.
making myself into a better version of myself every time. So I think the avoidance of doing that like stopped me from growing, but I think there's some things maybe to explore still there. So yeah.
Hmm.
But back to the talking about reminiscing. No, I don't really do it. So once in a while, I see a photo come up or something, and I'll think about things fondly, or I'll see something one of the roommates has done on Facebook, or So yeah, it's not like a big thing anymore.
But it's never like a traumatic thing when you see something, right? Like if you see a picture maybe of an old photo, you don't like get triggered by anything.
No, no, not really. I mean, especially not of real world. Real world was
Yeah, that
was
was.
really sweet, lovely time, and I have very fond memories of it. And sad memories of it too, because I lost Pedro, as you
Yeah.
know, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But um, so yeah, but that was a really heartfelt thing, and that was how I really felt like real world began. Like we were all being really honest and being ourselves, and we weren't trying to date each other. We were trying to get to know each other, and it was really sweet. It was. It was.
It
I mean,
was.
my only regret that I wasn't there for the whole time, because obviously I came in late, and there is a whole thing about that. You come in late, and everybody else has already bonded, and they've already got their storylines going, and everyone, would say to me, "You need to get your agenda out there," and I was like, what is my agenda? And I'm like, I think I'm doing my agenda. I'm living my agenda because I'm living as a vegan, and that was so unheard of then, you
Mm.
know. And so that was, I think, the interest in me was one of the initial interests in me from production side was that,
Hmm.
you know, because it was unusual. So
You're right.
they,
It was sweet, and it's crazy, Joe. It does not exist today. You know, like we don't get people just sitting around the living room having just conversations about life anymore. It's reality
oh,
TV's unfortunately taken a turn for the worst, I feel like, but I don't think it necessarily that really concerns you or I, and that's not really our call, but I'm just pointing out an objective opinion on my part at
yeah,
least.
but
Yeah.
that's just reality TV, right? Not your life, like in
Yeah.
general, your young life. No, I'm asking, like, in your young life, you go out there. I mean, you obviously do because you've approached so many people, but and got to know them. But I'm just wondering if this is a thing that has gone from reality TV to actual life, or do you think that people really sit down and have those deep conversations now?
I think that those conversations are probably things that only typically occur within inner circles. I think that reality TV has probably taken on a bit of an identity similar to how social media is. It's almost like social media, like you see tweets, comments. It's almost like those tweets and comments are just in a superficial, artificial kind of setting now on reality TV where people are
Yeah,
just kind of like shin deep in the water, I guess, in terms of what they talk about and what goes down. It's more based around like fighting and relationships, I guess, drama.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I would say. But I do want to now. Oh no, did you have something to say?
No, no, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna now kind of want to get into and segue into how you got on the show. Like, what was your casting process and story like? Maybe what prompted you to audition, and how the actual story, from what you could remember, went down.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say that I never applied. And it's kind of a magical story, really, because I was life young and free in Lake Tahoe, and I had gotten married, and the relationship had fallen apart,
Hmm.
and I had just left that relationship and gotten a job, and I was in college and taking classes and supporting myself. So here, you know, when I think about that now, I didn't really think about it then, but when I think about that now, I'm like, wow, I was like 21 years old. I didn't have anybody out there. I didn't have any family. I had no support. So everything I did came from me, you know, and I didn't always do the right thing. I certainly didn't. But wow, I mean, when I think about that now, I'm like, I was really brave.
Oh yeah, that is a lot of bravery.
So I'd left this relationship and I just started working at Bennigan's in one of the casinos, and I was a door hostess.
Wow.
And I'd been out rock climbing that day and I had a fantastic day. So I was buzzing. I was like so happy and like full of myself. And I checked in at work and I was in the back office. And my boss said to me, "Oh, I think some people are coming in from MTV tonight." And I was like, "What's all that about?" And he's like, "Well, they're doing this show, blah, blah, blah." And I had seen, before I came out to America, I had seen like a couple of the episodes of New York, which I was in love with. So I vaguely knew the show, but I didn't really, you know, I wasn't like a big fan or anything, but I kind of remembered Eric and, and, like 21, you know? So
Yeah.
give me a break. Everybody remembers Eric. And we actually ended up each other later. You know, we had good conversations and stuff when we got together on reunions and enjoyed each other's company. So, and it was great to meet him because he was one of the first people
Yeah.
that I remember seeing on TV that I met in real life, you know? So So anyway, I was in the back office and my boss was saying, oh, it's this show. And he said, I've heard they're scouting for a new roommate. And I just literally, the words flew out of my mouth. I just looked at him and I went, it's going to be me. And I went out, shut the door, put my little apron thing on to him and said it was going to be me. I left and went to the front desk, or whatever you call it, hostess stand.
Yeah.
And I started working and I forgot all about it until these two guys came in and they said to me, oh, we're from MTV, blah, blah, blah. We're bringing some people in. And it was two of the producers, George and Clay. And I started chatting to them and you know, I can't remember what I was saying, but I remember just being really bubbly because I was in such a great mood. And they asked me if I could go and sit with them. And while they had some drinks or some food, I think they had food, and then the roommates came in later. And my boss was there, and he said, "Yeah, sure, go and sit with them, which was really nice because I was working after all. So I went and sat, and they, we just were talking, and I was bubbly, and I didn't think anything of it really at the time, but mates came in and they went into the bar next door because I was in the restaurant part. So I didn't actually see the roommates. I never saw them. All I met were the two producers. And they said to us, we're looking for someone, and you really seem like you would fit. Would you come and do an interview on camera tomorrow? So I said, yeah, sure. And I went out that night. I was drinking. All the things you shouldn't do. I should have gone home, put on a face mask, But I went, and I got up the next morning and went, and we did it outside in front of the lake because I was living in Lake Tahoe. And again, just a bunch of questions. And I just remember being, just being myself. I'm a really optimistic person. And I'm bubbly and happy most of the time. So contrary to what they might have shown on the Gauntlet, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I get along with everyone. I'm not real controversial. I don't really like confrontation or fights or anything like that. So I think they thought I was a good fit, because they didn't want any more trouble in the house after Puck, They wanted somebody who wasn't going to stir the pot, or rock the boat. So I remember getting a call from them another couple of days later, and they flew me to San Francisco for another meeting. And then after that, I flew to Los Angeles to Buena Murray to meet everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I know that Mary Ellis didn't like me very much. But everybody else did. And so I came up with this thing where they would send 3 people in. And that's how they said to me, they phoned me up and said, we're going to send 3 people in. And if you get chosen, then you move straight in. So you need to make sure everything's taken care of. You need to make sure everything's taken care of before you come to San Francisco, basically. And I was in college, so I went to the dean and showed him my grades and everything. And I said, I've just been invited to do this TV show, but it's in San Francisco. So can I finish my semester as homeschool? And they let me.
Wow.
And all I had to do was fly up a couple of times for exams. So I just flew from San Francisco to Tahoe a couple of times to take exams.
So you were taking exams while you were filming the show?
Yeah, I mean, I was studying while I was on the show.
Crazy.
I mean, we were all doing something. I think Rachel was if she was doing anything. I think she was the only one that didn't have anything going on. Corey was studying, Pam was studying. I mean, we were just living our lives. That was what was so different, I think, is that everybody else, we were like trying to live our lives, you know? And the new shows, they don't do that, do they?
No. School doesn't exist for the new shows.
I mean, they didn't show any of it.
Yeah.
Showed any of it. I can't even remember now, but I went up a couple of times. They filmed me going up. But you know, it's not the most exciting television, is it? Somebody going up, taking a test. So yeah, I understand why they cut things the way they do, because you know, normal life is normal life. You know, it's mundane some of the time, or a lot of the time. So yeah, and then so I got all that sorted out, and then I went to San Francisco with like, I didn't have much, you know. I come from England with one backpack. I had this little tiny backpack about this big. I had a ski boot bag. I had some skis. I really didn't have a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't hard to kind of move from one place to another, but it was also quite hard moving in with all the other kids who had come from their homes and had brought great big suitcases. And, you know, I was kind of like a refugee arriving with with nothing. So, yeah, I did find it a little bit difficult in that sense. I always felt like, oh, I don't have any clothes, or, you know, that kind of thing. But, hey, I was never one to let stuff like that bother me. So we soon got over that. But yeah, then I went and did the whole, you know, they let us in one by one and they interviewed us with the housemates. And as you know, the story turned out they picked me.
I do remember that story. That was
you know why I'm laughing, don't you?
Yeah, I think I have an idea as well. That was interesting because I look at so many of the variables that went into that situation. You walk into a house, you're by nature like a pretty quiet, you know, individual, you know what I'm saying? And you're being tasked with the idea of having to replace, you know, a guy like Puck, who is like one of the most polarizing, you know, figures to ever be on this show. And especially at that time period, I don't think that's anything that anybody had seen really before. So you're talking about two vastly different people, and you're pretty much just having like a cold call there, just having to kind of impress these people and show them like why they would want to choose you to live with them. And not only that, you're going up against people like, you know, it's crazy how history works itself now. Mark Long is one of the people that you're kind of up against with the roommates choosing, and then you get picked over him. And he's now considered the godfather of this whole operation, and he's still, you know, doing things. But it's kind of crazy that you replace a guy like Puck, and then you get picked over Mark Long, who everybody knows who he is today, which has got to be like such an honor to be picked in general, but just almost like feels like a dream almost, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it really was at the time. I mean, it wasn't such a dream as I thought. When I first got the contract, I thought this is going to be it. You know, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to have money. I'm going to never have to worry about anything. And then I looked at the contract and saw how much we were being paid. And I was like, you are joking me. I could not believe it. You know, I was like, and I actually tried to fight it a little bit at first, but they just, they were like Stonewall, you know?
Yeah.
Do it, then don't do it, you know, basically, if you don't want to do it. So I thought, well, at 20, what are you doing at 21? I was in college. I lived in America. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. You know, all the other kids in the house had their lives mapped out. You know, Judd was going to be a cartoonist and Pam was going to be a doctor. And, you know, it was just like, it was difficult for me in that sense because I didn't have that foundation, you know.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it all the same.
What was your dynamic like in years that would proceed, like with Mark, like after, you know, he kind of did he cold shoulder you a little bit or have like any envy?
I mean, I think that Mark never liked me because of that.
Really?
You know, he has got a big ego. I've seen enough of him, and I don't watch. I'm not talking about what's going on now because I don't know, but just from being around in those early days, yeah, I mean, there was always this kind of tension, but I've only met him like a couple of times, so you know, who knows? I mean, he's probably, I don't know. I don't know if he's a nice guy or not, to be honest. I just Is that a bad thing to say? I don't know. I don't know if we would get along. I don't know if we would gel. You know, I'm pretty easygoing, so
Yeah.
I pretty much get along with everybody, but you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
We'll leave it at that.
what about the guy you replaced, Puck? Did you ever what did you hear about him like before moving in? And then maybe did you get the chance to meet him? And if so, like did those descriptions by the roommates coincide with the Puck that you met?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about Puck before moving in. They just said that a roommate was leaving. But obviously, once I'd gotten in, I got the full story. All the roommates told me different parts of it, but not in a gossipy way. Not It was just coming out. You know, it wasn't. It was different then. It was really different. And I met Puck a few days later. He was outside of the house. And he used to knock around, you know, sometimes he'd show up. So we were all we were all messing around, and Judd came out with this joke, and they wouldn't say it, and I'm like, I'll say it. And so I went out onto the balcony, and Puck was down with his bike, you know, and we were okay with each other. We were kind of, you know, young people, you know, get along. So we weren't really having any problem with each other. But I think, I can't remember if it was before or after we'd been to Hawaii, and this joke came out. So it was like knock knock, and he said, "Who's there?" No, it wasn't a knock knock joke. No, it was a what's the difference joke. What's the difference between Puck and the pool table? And Puck's like, "What is the difference?" And I'm like, "The pool table's still in the house." It's cheesy. It was a Judd joke, right? Judd was the dad. Judd was the dad of the family, even at 22 or 23, however old he was then. Judd was the dad. So that was his. I'm sure he's a great dad now, though. I'm sure he's really,
Yeah.
you know, embraced that role. Both of them. I'm sure they're wonderful parents.
So did you enjoy your encounters with Puck? Like, do you feel like he's misunderstood, or do you feel like some of the opinions about him are brought upon rightfully so?
Do you know what? I always wanted to like Puck. I always really wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and understand where he was coming from. And I tried and I tried, and we used to hang out like after the shows. When I first came from San Francisco, I lived in Manhattan Beach, and I used to go up to LA sometimes and hang out with Buena Murray and meet up with him. You know, we'd race cars around, do stupid stuff.
Okay.
He brought a snake out to lunch with us. I wore it around my neck, you know.
Wow.
Like, you know, it was we got along because we had a lot in common. But there's a side to Puck that, and there's a side to all of us, but there's a side to Puck that is really damaged. And but you know, when you continue to keep making the same mistakes, then you can't give excuses for that anymore. So
Right.
and we were friends up until a few years ago. I mean, even on Facebook, you know. But I don't want to say what happened, but you know, he's not around anymore anyway. So
Mhm.
I haven't really had any contact with him in you know, it's got to be about 5 to 7 years at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like many people really know about his whereabouts, but you know,
Yeah,
we're obviously still wishing well for him. As
exactly.
as we
Yeah,
would anybody, you know, but
yeah, definitely.
yeah. So you were kind of having a few factors work against you, I guess you could say, in the aspect that like historically speaking, whenever someone comes into the house later, usually their storyline is to take like a little bit of a backseat. But I felt like, especially in this case, because of who you were replacing, and then you throw in the fact of the storyline going on with Pedro, you had a young adult dealing with like AIDS on national television. That's obviously going to take
Yeah.
precedent and take the bigger story and push to the forefront. Um, but we didn't really get to see like as much, maybe I feel like, as your story as we probably could have or should have. We did see kind of in the first beginning episodes of your arrival. I mean, you had a court date that you had to go to. What was that situation about, like going on to the show?
Yeah, I mean, that was because I was going through a divorce.
Okay. There was a
And I had to
restraining
go to
order, right?
court. There was a restraining order, yeah, yeah, and that
Okay.
was very sad. Look, and I'd never really seen an example of a good marriage in my life, and I came out to America. I had a visa for 6 months. I met this guy. He was older than me, like at least 10 years. I can't even remember how old he was now, but I remember it was, there was a gap, and I loved him, like, but in that really kind of naive, um, youthful love, which didn't really understand what a marriage was, but I honestly went into that marriage with full intent of living it out. I never went in thinking, oh, I'll just play with this for a while or whatever. It was a serious thing for me. But I wasn't equipped for it, and I didn't know that person well enough,
Mm.
and things got difficult, and there were some situations that, um, well, without wanting to speak badly about anyone all these years later, that um, got a little out of hand, and so I had to apply for a restraining order and get out. And that was really difficult to be going through in the house, because none of those kids like understood. Like, probably you're sitting there going, what is she talking about? But like, it was really difficult to be
Hmm.
going through in a bunch of house in the house with kids that knew nothing about any of that. Nobody had
Right.
even thought about any of that.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was one of the things that Don never really got explored, was why I chose that, why I did that. What was going on in me that I felt the need to do that at 21 years old to somebody I had only met 6 months before. What was I running from? What were my problems? Why did I come to America when I was 21? But what happened before that? I lived in France when I was 16 by myself, without I left home when I was 16. So none of that was explored, and it could have been. There was a lot to tell, but it. I didn't really mind that so much, because I knew that what was happening with Pedro was so important
Hmm.
that, like, it had to take precedence over whatever had happened with me in my
Yeah.
past. And so I never really felt resentful or um, like that was unfair. I just felt like, what a shame, that would have been a good opportunity for me to really explore myself, and I didn't get that opportunity there.
Yeah.
So, I felt like the others did get a really good opportunity to like explore themselves. Yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing like what maybe prompted you to move to America when you were 16? Like, were you just trying to find like a better living for yourself, or?
No, I was 21 when I moved to America. I was
Okay.
16 when I moved to France.
Oh,
Yeah,
France,
I
right.
mean, I just didn't have a very good home life, and I wasn't. There were some things that happened to me when I was younger, which we can talk about later when we address Gauntlet,
Yeah.
because it's partly connected to that. And um, there are some things that I'm still exploring that I don't know about. Like, I still don't know if there's something more to more behind to my reaction to things. And I talked to you a little bit about that before, didn't I? So yeah, I mean, what was going on around me growing up, and I didn't want that for myself.
Right.
Like a lot of the girls that I knew growing up, by the time they were 21, they were living in a council house with 3 kids and maybe had a man and maybe not. And I just didn't want that for myself. So I did what I could to get out, you know. And I didn't I didn't really have like parental support like that. My mum was very supportive, but she was very laissez-faire. So she'd be like, you can do anything, go do what you want to do. And that's exactly what I did, you know. But because I was lacking in foundation and support, financial, emotional, a bit of a rough ride sometimes.
I'm sure it was a rough ride, but I mean, I think it all works out for a reason. I mean, you did make something for yourself, I feel like, for a while, you know, and we're going to get into more of those things as this progresses. I guess I want to first bring up the fact that you're, I believe, the first documented person on television to use or invent the word vegan. If I'm correct, I believe so.
I don't know if I'm the first person. I don't think I was the first person to ever use it, but I feel like within this
Realm.
forum, I was, yeah, definitely. And I feel like because it was so popular, MTV at that point, what I did was reached a lot of people's ears. Whereas, you know, I know that there was like a BBC documentary in the 70s about a vegan family. But who was watching that? Not a bunch of, you know, 13
Kids.
to
Yeah.
35-year-olds. Yeah, no, they weren't watching that. So instrumental in getting, you know, that word out there, or helping people understand more about veganism and vegetarianism.
Well, hopefully you could reach my ears. I got to clean up the earwax so I could hear you more about maybe becoming a vegan. My
Well, it's certainly a good thing for everybody. The more vegans, the better, right? I mean, we've all had that education now. I feel like I can say this safely now without like people jumping on me, like, because we've had so much more education now. Um, and we all know somebody who's a vegetarian or vegan or who eats that way because they like it.
yeah,
Choices are there now, because before we didn't have the choices. I mean, I was eating chips and salad like everywhere I went. You know, you get
right.
chips and salad for years, and that was all you could eat. But outside of home, and everything at home had to be cooked from scratch. You know, but I love cooking, so I still cook. I still cook a lot. Um, And what's funny is now I live in Spain, and like these are some of the biggest meat eaters in the world. And when I was vegan, I moved to America, and those are some of the biggest meat eaters in the world. So it seems to be following me around. Like I keep moving to the next country, and I'm trying to battle that one next.
I do have to ask you about a few more people from your original Real World season before we close the Real World topic of things. Did you get to formulate any type of relationship with Pedro before his untimely passing, or how did that dynamic go down with you and him?
Yeah. Pedro and I, you know, we had mutual understanding and respect, but he was very clear to me as soon as I moved into the house that he didn't want to be friends.
Oh.
He just said to me, I don't have time for any more people in my life. I have the people that I have, and I have to give them all that I have got. So I just had to accept that and watch, you know, him unfold from afar. And that was kind of tough, really,
Right.
because I already felt like I was coming in late, and um, I was I was not as included in some things, you know. Obviously, they had all their jokes, and you know,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't, you know. And I was already in America, so I was missing out on years of pop culture that they had all grown up on. So they were talking about things, and I didn't always understand, and that continued like way into my 20s, like all through growing up in America. That continued because I was missing that gap, you know. I'd
Yeah.
seen Sesame Street and MTV a little bit,
I'm
but
sure a lot of people have.
all the rest was not my go-to popular culture, so I couldn't make those jokes or um but I've learned to live with that really because I haven't stopped moving around.
Yeah. Now, what
So
about
yeah,
once?
I love Pedro, and I thought, and I'm really proud of him. And but yeah, we didn't get close. No. Mm.
Yeah. Now, lastly, what about once you got off the show, yours and Rachel's relationship? How did that, I guess, progress or digress? I guess you could call it, because you guys seem to be pretty close on the show.
Rachel and I were like, I think they used to call us the Bopsy twins or something like that. Like we were so close. We had such a fun, loving friendship. And I'm not that that was missing with Corey because we also had that. And I want to say that now because when the edit came out, it made it look like we were ignoring Corey and Corey wasn't part of it. And I'm sure some of that went happened, but it wasn't intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like Corey is a lovely person. She was a lovely person then, and she was a good friend. It's just that with Rachel at that time, there was something that it was an immediate like, you know, we were so close. Um, After the show, it was a little bit different. I'm just trying to think back now to how it actually happened. Yeah, so basically everyone goes back to their lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I didn't have a life. I'd moved from Tahoe to San Francisco, and I'd done some college classes, and I didn't know. I was like, what do I do now? Where do I go? What do I do? And I stayed in San Francisco for 6 months, and Rachel went on home. But unbeknown, you know, in the background, we had made plans. We were going to live together. We were going to be roommates. We were going to continue on you know, doing what we were doing. I was going to continue on with school because I was taking my BA at the time. And so there were all these plans. And then I didn't hear from her for a while. And I just, you know, she got involved in her life again. And I think from what I remember, her mum didn't really like her hanging out with me, which was very hurtful. Um, and the relationship fizzled. We saw each other a few times, like when she came to LA. I remember hanging out with her and her first baby, Eva, who was such a gorgeous little thing. We spent some time together if she came to LA. But no, I didn't see her very much. And I had to get on with my life because I didn't have support. So I needed to find the next school I was going to, find the next job, find the next town I was going to, you know?
Right.
So, yeah. Also, there was another whole thing that was going on. I'd moved to LA as well for a little while. And I don't know if we should talk about that yet, but yeah, so that's Rachel. Yeah, we didn't really see each other. So, hey, Rachel.
Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
Hey, Rachel. Hey, hi and bye. She gave me the hi and bye.
Now give one right back. Pleased to meet you. See you later. You see,
um,
yeah, you and I talked a little bit on text about this too. So there, not too long after your real world season, they were coming out with road rules, and there was gonna be a first road rule season. You were almost on that one, right? Could you give me the lowdown on what happened there?
Now I'm going to spill some tea because, yeah,
Here we
because
go.
I've never spoken about this either. Um, One of the producers on the show, you know, with us every day, Rachel and I used to flirt with everybody. We flirted with all the crew. We flirted with every male that was around. And it was a game for us. It was like this thing that we did. And it was a hee hee hee, ha ha ha. Well, one of the attractions got a little bit more than just flirting. And so this producer and I were flirting occasionally, but then the other housemates were picking up on it, and especially Rachel. And Rachel was kind of encouraging me at the time. But nothing was going to, I mean, we weren't doing anything, because we weren't even dating on the show. It was really so harmless. It was like looking at each other, or, you know, saying silly things to each other or whatever. It was so harmless. But when we had the wrap party, of course, we were all dolled up, the thing's over, and there's been this like electric tension between me and this guy for a few weeks, and we're drinking, and we ended up kissing, and that was it. Like, but that was a big no-no for Buna Murray, and we actually ended up dating for a while. And he was the main guy who started Road Rules. So, hey, Carrey. So he used me on Road Rules then.
So you would have been on.
I was told that I would have been on, because I couldn't do any more shows because I was dating him. I mean, I had a whole meeting and everything at Buna Murray, and they were like, "Are you guys going to let this out into the public, or is this going to be a secret?" Or it was like a huge thing, and then they just kind of like let me go, kind of thing.
Okay.
So I missed opportunity there because of who I wanted to date, basically. And it was a bit sad because obviously the relationship didn't work out. It was just, you know, I think we dated for about 8 months, and he was really serious. I broke it off with him, and only because I wasn't 100% sure about the relationship. And I felt really bad about it at the time. But I'm sure he feels like he probably saved himself at that point. Yeah, so it's all very difficult to talk about because I don't want to talk about people years after the fact,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
when all that's kind of over and done with. And he was a very lovely person, but probably not the right choice for me, you know. And that's what I'm talking about I didn't have the emotional support. I didn't have anybody around me who had known me for years and years who was saying, maybe like take a step back and think
Right.
about this, you know. I didn't have any of that. I was just like going with whatever kind of emotion, wherever emotions led me, and it wasn't always the best thing for me.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, can I just say though, the other
Yeah.
thing that I didn't really realize at that stage, and I know we're going to get into mental health a little bit, but the other thing that I didn't realize at that stage was that I was suffering so badly with social anxiety, and I didn't even know what it was then.
Mm.
I just thought that I was shy or being weird, or I didn't know what was going. I
Yeah.
didn't know, there weren't words for it then. It wasn't something that was in my vocabulary to say I have social anxiety, but I really did. So any opportunity for me to kind of, even though I wanted the spotlight, it's weird to be out of it again and hiding away and be protected, seemed like the right thing to do at the time. So
Sometimes you just kind of, when you're so young, you don't even realize when something's happening to you, like what's happening to you, until you see it from like a different lens as you get older, I guess you could say. So
yeah.
What were you doing though from that gap? So you come off your real world, obviously, and then there's a very big gap in between doing the Gauntlet. It was at least like what was your real world came out in 94, was it? Or
95, I think,
95. So that would have been like a
to
10
2006. Yeah.
2006. So that would have been an 11-year gap. What were you maybe up to during that nucleus?
You know, the first thing was first was that I wanted to finish my degree.
Hmm.
So I ended up moving to Santa Barbara. I played around for a little while. I went to some little city colleges. I went up to Mammoth Mountain and did a ski season up there, and I was ski patrol, and that was a whole nother adventure. Millions of stories there, but then Mammoth Mountain. So I went from San Francisco to LA and up to Mammoth, and then from Mammoth Mountain to Santa Barbara. And I stayed in Santa Barbara for 7 years. And I finished my degree. I went to City College first. I got into UCSB. And it was like this huge thing for me. I was the first person in my family to ever go to university.
Yeah.
So um, I was determined to do it. I always wanted to do it. I was always like, I'm going to graduate. You know, I'd seen all the movies. Well, I want to throw my hat up in the air. And you know, that's the only thing you know about uni when you're watching on TV, right? You just see the graduation. So, but I always wanted to go, and my mom always encouraged me in terms of education. You know, she always wanted me to get a good education. So I did that, and I live with a family of artists. I keep talking about my exes, but it's sorry, that's my life, man.
Happens to
I
the
live
best
with
of
a
us.
wonderful family of artists, and and two sons. I was going out with one of them and the mum and dad, and we lived in Santa Barbara, and we lived in some amazing houses, and we painted murals for Las Vegas and
Hmm.
other, um, well, not just for Las Vegas, but anywhere in the world, global, that needed murals, oil on canvas. So that was a real adventure. I mean, I'd always been artistic, but I'd never studied art, and I wasn't studying art. But Popsy, the dad of the family, he was the first Popsy, and he was the master artist, and the mother was an artist too. The whole family were, and so they just embraced me, and I just got really into this, you know. And we were into the rave scene, and you know, me and the son, we partied and did all those things, you know. And occasionally, that was I was with him when we did one of the reunions for for Real World. I think it was the first 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
And he came down with me, and that was some wild times.
And weren't you you were roommates for John for that one, weren't you?
Out of control.
Oh man.
Don't ever talk to John about that.
He'll be
I
watching
think
this.
John, no, I think John said, I mean, I mean, we were drinking, we were doing all kinds of naughty things. I mean, it was, you know, a bunch of young people doing in Hollywood doing naughty stuff, right? So we filmed the show, and we had to share rooms, yeah. And I ended up with John, who I didn't really know John, but I was one of those people that was like, hey, you know, I don't mind, you know, whatever. And I think John said that in the middle of the night we woke him up because we all came back into the room and just stripped off and jumped into the bed like we were all like, and there were three of us naked.
Oh my god.
I think that's the story. You'll have to ask him about it.
He'll be watching this, so
Nothing
he'll be able to.
happened, by the way. We
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
doing anything
Yeah.
with him in the bed next door, because I know that's quite a thing now, like
Yeah.
on some of these shows. But it was still very innocent. But yeah, I think John was quite surprised, you know, because we just like, woo! God.
I'm waiting for you to get into these Jim Carrey, Ben Stiller, and Brad Pitt stories that you and
Oh
I
my
have been talking.
God. So yeah, I have to go back down to
You
LA for
gotta
that. So
you gotta enlighten the people on this, Joe. Only you've told me about this. The people gotta know.
people got to know. So after Santa Barbara, I from uni, but I've been taking acting classes, and I'd been seriously like I was thought I was going to be an actress. I was like really serious in my craft. I, you know, we were in a really serious school. If you were 10 minutes late, you had to sit through the whole class and you didn't get to act. And it was
Hmm.
like a 4 hour class on a Saturday morning and then on a Wednesday night as well. So I graduated and I had dreams of going to LA, right? So here I am. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was like, you know, and seen enough of the entertainment industry to know that I liked it and I felt comfortable in it.
Yeah.
Um, so here I go down to LA and you don't put anything about real world on your headshots. I get these cheesy old headshots done with my phone number on the little card and everything. And so I start working. I was there for 4 years. I worked. I didn't ever get a role. I worked as background, but that was great. I loved it. You know, I worked really hard. In the beginning, I was non-union. I would get paid like $50 a day or something for, it was awful. We'd get fed, which
Yeah.
I was grateful for because I was
Hmm.
starving, like. um, it also afforded me some really good opportunities to meet some really people that I would have never have met. I worked on this one. Oh, I think it was Bruce Almighty,
Right.
and it was directed by Tom Shadyac.
Hmm.
And Tom Shadyac, there were like 600 extras there, and Tom Shadyac recognized me.
Wow.
And he came over and he introduced himself and he said, "Oh, thanks so much for coming to work on my set, blah, blah, blah." And he was so lovely. And he, kind of took me under his wing. And I worked quite a few days or weeks on that film and got to know Jim Carrey, and which was pretty magic, really. I mean, you'd go in with all these extras and everyone's hungry to be an actor and they all want to meet the star, but Jim would come up and he'd "Oh, Joanna," and he'd give me 2 kisses. He'd kiss me on the cheek and he'd say, "Come sit with me," and I'd go sit with him. And it was like when iPods first came out, and I remember sitting on the grass with him, and we had one headphone each and we were listening to his iPod and chatting. And he's a really lovely, lovely person. Um, and I did give him one of my cheesy old headshot photo cards with the phone number on it. Oh. And actually, I don't know if he had anything to do with it, but later on, I was going through a bit of a rough patch. This was, I think, right before Gauntlet. Um, I was going through some stuff, and I got a call to go and be the stand-in for the little girl on Lemony Snicket, the next
Wow.
movie he did. And I was a bit messed up and I just didn't go. I just didn't show up. And it's one of my biggest regrets, really, because I don't know if Jim had anything to do with it, but it would have been nice to spend like 6 months working on a movie with them and like actually getting myself established in LA properly, and maybe getting a life and a career out of it, rather than
Yeah.
doing what I ended up doing, which was, Gauntlet comes right after that. So when I was going through all that and not showing up for work, then Gauntlet happened, right? So I was already in a bad place. Um, Ben Stiller one as well. Loved him. I got to have a little dance with him and his wife and Christine Taylor at
Wow.
this party for Starsky and Hutch, because I worked on that. And not you know, I got invited because I was me. Not the extras didn't normally get invited to these kind of things. So
Oh,
if
all
you're
right.
listening, don't go
Toot,
to LA
toot
thinking
your
that you're
horn a
going to
little
get
bit.
invited. No, I'm just saying, like, I'm not tooting the horn. I'm just being honest. Like, I would never have expected these kind of things to happen in my life.
Yeah.
But I think that's how Real World opened a few doors for me, if you know what
Mhm.
I mean. Because even though it wasn't opening doors for me in terms of work, like, those people had seen me, they knew me, you know.
That's so cool. That's very cool.
Yeah. Um, and at that point, it was cool because Real World was cool then, you know.
Yeah.
I
It
mean,
was
no,
a
I'm
cool.
not dissing any of the new cast or whatever. I just don't know enough about it, so I'm not
Mhm.
gonna judge anyone for what's going on. It was just very different from how
Right.
ours were.
So was the Gauntlet was the only call, right? Like, were there any challenge calls coming into you like before that one while you were
I
working?
hadn't heard from MTV since we did like the 10-year reunion,
Okay.
and I hadn't heard. No, I hadn't heard a thing. So I got that call. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm union now. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that. But I was hungry, and I don't mean for work. I mean, I was hungry. Like, I needed to eat, and I needed a paycheck. You know, this happened in LA when it was the union actor strike, and there wasn't any work. And so that's why, again, I really messed up with this whole Jim Carrey, like, Lemony Snicket thing. Um, because, you know, I didn't have any work. I was living in an apartment. I had a car payment. I had rent to pay. You know, rent's not cheap in
Yeah.
LA. And so when they called me, at first I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But as a few weeks went by and I still wasn't getting booked, I was like, I better do this job. And I actually had to call my dad and ask him to loan me the money so I could pay my rent to cover it while I was gone.
So you made a couple sacrifices to make the Gauntlet happen.
Yeah, because I thought I was going to get a paycheck out of the at the end of it. And I had no business going on that show because I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. I'd never seen a show. I'd I'd only ever seen seasons of The Real World up to about season 5. So, you know, we're talking like really tame stuff, tame people. I wasn't expecting, you know, I thought like a competition show was going to be like It's a Knockout or something, you know, something like that, where you film for a little bit and then you get off and then you film for a little bit more. But it's going to be more real worldy with the cameras around more. But I didn't know there were cameras, you know, they were filming in the bathrooms, and like there were slats in the bathroom doors and they were open, and it's like I just wasn't
Comfortable.
expecting that lack of privacy. Yeah, no, I just wasn't prepared at all. Mentally, I was in a bad state from being in a bad state. So it was a whole like relation of, you know, and when you think about it, the reason why I went there was because I needed a paycheck. So it was kind of fight or flight. I was already going out of a need, you know. I wasn't going, oh, because I'm going to have a great time and I'm really looking forward to doing this, you know.
And I would have to assume that going to a show like that after like over a decade of a layoff had to have been a bit of a culture shock for you as well. And like I'm sure I said you must have known like the Cyruses and the Beths of the world that were going to be there, but everyone else had to be a little foreign to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd met Cyrus and Beth a few times and we've always been really friendly, but I wasn't friends with anybody there. I didn't know anybody there. Nobody really knew me there.
Yeah.
Um, and and I'd never seen the show. I wish that production beforehand, because they said to me, watch the show before you come. And I said, I don't have cable or whatever it was that I needed at that time to watch it. And so they said, come into the office and show you here. My social anxiety was such that I didn't want to go into the office from social anxiety, but if I had to do something, I would do it. But so I didn't go in there and watch the videos. I just thought, oh, I can handle this, like everything else I've done in my life.
You know, we're going to get into the pressing topic that I'm sure everyone's going to want to hear about. But before we do that, I just want to talk about that first challenge that you guys had on that. It was raining. You guys were on top of this little dock thing. What was that experience like? That seemed like a pretty nuts thing to do.
I mean, it wasn't that nuts to me. Because it just seemed like part of, the whole process. Oh, yeah, we're going to go on this dock. We're going to play paper, scissors, stone. People are going to jump in. And I actually almost lost that. I almost lost it because I almost jumped in before she did.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Ruthie? It was her, wasn't it? Who was on the last person on there with me?
It was Keena.
Okay. It was Keena. And he said we would jump off together. Hold hands and jump off together, but I don't know if she was trying to trick me so I would lose. Something in me stopped me at the last minute, I think. I can't really remember, but I remember kind of hesitating and stopping, and she hit the water first, and that's why I still won.
Yeah, which, I mean, based on, like, the rules of that season, being the team captain ultimately didn't end up working in their favor, I guess, because...
I mean, I don't know what happened because I never saw it, but
yeah, we'll get into that.
The guy that got team captain.
The rule was like whenever the team would lose, the team captain would have to go in to elimination automatically.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, because I
would have been out. I would have been out way early then, probably.
Yeah. These are some misconceptions about why you left. People coming up with like some theories. They thought maybe the team captain thing played a part, and then like something with your bed. But since you and I are here right now, this is about 17, 16, whatever years you want to call it in the making. This is the truth, nothing but the truth. Let's just get it out of the way. I want you to set the stage for me from your recollection, of course, what you could remember, and just you could take it from as much as you want to explain of what really went down on that fateful 2006 night in the Island of Tobago on the Gauntlet 2.
Oh, gosh, the Island of Tobago. Oh, whenever anyone says the Island of Tobago now, all I can hear is Zach Braff, because I remember working on Scrubs with him and having lunch with him one day, and he was so teasing me about the Gauntlet.
Oh, so this was after?
This was after, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I did work a little bit after, but then I ended up leaving shortly after that. I'm leaving the country and my home for 14 years. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so whenever anyone says Island of Tobago, all I see is him saying that. Let me take myself back there. Difficult because I don't really remember that much and I haven't seen it. So this is completely my view because I haven't seen the edit or anything. I remember doing that challenge. I remember leaving us wet and cold. Like 5 hours, and they wouldn't let us in the house. And I couldn't understand why they wouldn't let us in the house. And everyone kept saying, oh, they do this stuff. But to me, I was used to working in Hollywood now. I wasn't used to being treated like this. I was like, well, surely we can get dry and hang out for a little while. But they said they were getting the house ready. But so I was already kind of irritated from that, getting cold and being wet. And for a girl being in a wet swimsuit for hours is not really comfortable.
I wouldn't imagine so.
I'm sure it's not for a boy either, but...
I wouldn't imagine so.
So that was the start of it all. Really, just that really starting to feel uncomfortable and looking around and not really knowing anyone. And like, I remember talking to Beth in the van and just feeling really uncomfortable, like not really wanting to open up or talk to her or anything. I don't know. I just that's when it started. So anyway, we went into the house, changed again. I mean, we were like, oh, the house, and the house was okay. I wasn't that impressed, honestly. I'm, you know, I've seen nicer places, but it was okay, you know. But some of the younger kids were like, yeah, yeah, and they got really excited to have a swimming pool and all those things. So the drinking started. I remember contacting a guy that I was seeing in LA. He was looking after my dog as well, so I wanted to check on my dog. And I didn't really realize this about me and Chihuahuas when I got my first Chihuahua, or at that stage, but they really are my therapy dogs, you know, like really 100%. So that was another thing. I was really missing my dog as well, like my baby, my child. And look, I don't know. I have to premise this with something else, because wherever I am, I always feel like an outsider. And this is something that I am exploring more now, with kind of more release about adult autism. And I don't know if that's something, because I've never been diagnosed, if that's something I have, but I definitely have some of those qualities. Like anxiety being number one, but definitely like sometimes when things get too, like just that situation in the Gauntlet, it got too noisy, too fast. It just like flipped me over the edge. And I know that like sometimes people would say, oh, that's just her trying to make an excuse for that. And I'm not trying to make any excuses. I am genuinely trying to explore what happened to me then. But that's not been the only time I've reacted like that in a situation. So, and I also have, you know, I try to put myself in small spaces. Like when I was a kid, I would go and put myself in the wardrobe, you know, and hide. So there's things about my life that I still need to explore in that sense. And you know, autism's got a really wide spectrum, so I could be on it somewhere. And I want to explore that,
Yeah.
so that I have more understanding of myself. So that's one thing. I remember it all getting a bit much in the house because everybody was really drinking loads and it was getting loud. And I kind of bonded with Derek, and he said, do you want to go out for a smoke? So I said, yeah. He said, let's go down onto the driveway. I said, oh, you managed to get some. And he's like, yeah, we always figure it out. I guess he'd been on these shows before. Everybody figures out to get what they need to enjoy themselves. So we went out and sat in the driveway and we're just chatting, and it was all normal and it was fine. And I was really chilled out, obviously. And I was in a good mood, and back into the house and went up to my room. And this is what tripped me out. The camera guy was on the floor with the camera filming through the slats in the bathroom. I don't even know who was in there, but they were having sex, or they were in the mode of having sex, undressing each other, or I don't know, like, you know, what stage they were at.
This wasn't on your bed, right? Like this didn't occur?
I didn't see anybody on my bed at this point.
Okay.
There wasn't anybody on my bed. They were in the bathroom, and the crew were filming them in the bathroom. And I walked in and I went, what the fuck are you doing? Excuse me.
You said that to the camera guy?
Yeah. I was like, what are you doing? And they were like, and there was like two people standing around from production, like that, and they were watching these kids. And I just felt immediately like really protective. Don't forget that like these kids are in their early 20s, and I was already 30 something at this stage. I felt like I needed to protect them, and I was like, you know, that's horrible, don't, you know. And I started yelling at them, and I was starting to get into an argument with production about, you know, the boundaries of things. And, you know, I didn't know that the kids did all this stuff. I didn't know that they were doing this, but actually I felt for the position these kids were in and what they were actually doing in the bathroom, it was a little bit more than just, grabbing a boob or someone's butt. It was like they were actually in the throes of doing stuff, right? I don't know exactly what, and I don't want to say even if I do, but I just felt like they shouldn't be filming that. For the money that we're getting,
Yeah.
they're not, and these kids, that could ruin their lives. That's where the whole argument started. Then, so more and more production came in, and I was like going off about them. And then the kids started to come in. And then I looked at the bed, and there's chocolate sauce all over, and I'm free. And at this stage, I'm like, and I'm supposed, because they're saying to me, don't, because I'd already said I want to leave, right? I'd already said I was a victim of child abuse, sexual abuse. So seeing that happen, also the fact that I'm that victim, that triggered me, So at this point, I'm like, these people are being exploited. They're kids, and it really upset me. And so I was already saying I was going to go. And then I saw the bed and I was like, oh, I can't live like this. There was chocolate sauce. I didn't know anybody had been in there. All I saw was chocolate sauce all over the bed like that. But it really, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, come on. You're going to let them come in here and do this stuff? This is stupid. I want to go home. So then the next thing, there's a few of the kids came in because they'd heard the arguing, right? And the couple from the bathroom, I don't even remember who they were. I wouldn't recognize them even if I saw them today, So, but the initial thing was I was like really shocked about that, filming them doing what they were doing. Then I started getting my suitcase, and somebody had been through all my stuff. And they'd thrown all my stuff everywhere. And I was like, no, this is it. I'm going home. So I got the suitcase out. I started to get my stuff together. And I was standing at the end of the bed. And I remember talking to Ruthie. And I was going, no, I'm going home. I'm going home. And I turned around and she jumped on my back and pushed me down on the bed. And for about what felt like about 30 seconds, I couldn't breathe. I was like, face in the covers.
So this is probably where the manhandled line came from.
Exactly. So I got her off. That was when I flipped. I mean, it was like a switch. It was like night and day from that point. That's when it really escalated. And that was when I was like, I can't envision how I was, but I know I was screaming. I was screaming at production. I was screaming at the cast. I didn't want to know anybody. Everybody kept trying to come and talk to me and say it's okay and that, but I didn't know anyone. I was in a state of fight or flight. I didn't know any of these people. All I wanted to do was get out of there. And production was saying that I couldn't leave. They were saying that I couldn't leave the house, that they weren't going to let me leave. And so I said, you can't do that. I'm good. You have to let me leave. And they wouldn't. So I called the police. On the Island of Tobago, I called the police and said that MTV keeping me here, and I want to leave the house because I'm getting, picked on and roughed up. And I felt really bullied because at one stage I was surrounded by about at least 20 people, like in a circle around me. And I'm a small person. I'm tiny, right? Against some of these really big American kids. Or any kids that are big. I'm just a small person, right? But I felt really unsafe, and I didn't feel unsafe like someone was going to kill me, but I just had lost it, right? Obviously, I wanted to get out and calm down and be on my own, but they let it go so far. I couldn't come back from that. I literally, and I mean, it took a long time. I had a serious breakdown after. Like, I really, really suffered. I'm not saying it was all that fault because I was already in a bad place. I premised it with that. I was already, right. But I came out of it in a terrible, terrible place. And yeah, took me a while to kind of
Pick up the pieces.
yeah, because I had to kind of reinvent my life again. I moved back to England, and then I had to reinvent myself all over again, and leave that behind. And that wasn't easy, you know. I loved living in America. I loved LA. I loved working in the industry. If I could have worked in the industry my whole life, I would have done it because I loved it. I didn't have to be in the spotlight. I was happy to PA, extra. I was happy to do all
Yeah.
those jobs, you know. And I know that I would have worked my way up because I'm intelligent. So I wouldn't have
Yeah.
had a problem doing that. And in those kind of situations, you aren't stressed like I was there. You aren't triggered like I am. You know, this was a whole set of like triggers for me that really set me off, and nobody could reach me. And when I got to the hotel, it just got worse and worse because they sent me to a hotel, and they said you can't go home yet. Well, you know, they said they couldn't get flights or whatever. I can't remember, but they kept me there for a couple of nights trying to get me to come back in the house.
Really?
But I wouldn't go.
But I assume they tried to get like an exit interview for you as well, right? Since that's what they
They
usually.
did. Like when I got back to LA, they didn't pay me. They didn't pay me. They
They didn't pay
didn't
you
pay
for
me.
going on the show? Do you know why? Like, did they explain
He
why?
said I broke the contract.
What was the contract that you broke?
I was supposed to be there until I got eliminated or whatever.
I thought it was like an appearance check that you get for just showing up.
No, because I left. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know about contracts those days. I didn't even read it. I've got to be honest. I didn't
Yeah.
read it. I read the first one. I read the real world one because I was really excited and really interested at that point. But by the time it got round to Gauntlet, I'd seen enough dodgy MTV contracts that I was like, okay, this is just going to be the same as the other. All I want to know is how much I'm going to get paid, you
Mhm.
know?
Well, that's just now after hearing you kind of explain your side of the story, pretty much all I can chalk it up to is the power of the editing. Of course, you've never seen it, but just from like the fans who've seen it and myself, of course, like the way that thing was kind of depicted was we didn't it just kind of made it seem like you randomly called the cops and said you got manhandled, of course, without really much substance behind it, which I guess makes sense for them to depict it that way if you
I
know.
don't know why they wouldn't have shown the bit where Ruthie jumped on my back, though.
I
I suppose they didn't want to make her look like the bad person, or
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, and, but listen, so there was definitely some factors within yourself that maybe brought out your reaction, but there was substance, of course. Like you didn't just randomly go and do that for no reason, you know.
No,
So now at least
no.
we.
I mean, look, it, the way I reacted, and I'm only going off of what I remember because I haven't seen it. I know it was extreme
Hmm.
because I know how I am in those flight and fight situations, and I admit openly it's not the first time that I've reacted like that in my life. You know, I've suffered with it because, and that's why I'm looking now for explanations of that.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily happen anymore.
Well, I mean, we. I'm glad that you and I were able to connect and we were able to kind of make this thing happen. And
Yeah,
one day when the time's right, you and I on our own accord can maybe watch that and you know put the final
we
nail in the
should.
coffin.
Do you have Google Box out in America?
I should. I have Google Drive.
Google Box is a TV show. It's like it's it's a TV show of people watching TV.
Oh, really?
And have you not? Oh, you probably don't get it in America then. So what it is like, it's a bunch of normal people, just
Hmm.
like middle of the road people, sitting watching TV and their reactions. So, but it's really funny. And when you said that, we should do like a Google Box version of it because
Of us
That way
watching
you
that?
get the live reaction, right? Yeah.
One day, when the time is right, we could do that.
I mean, I have it on DVD, but I don't even know if I have it in this country. I think it
Hmm.
might be still in England. I don't know.
Yeah. One last thing. Was there like what did you do maybe in terms of like the mental health aspect of things? Because I know they do offer like therapy and stuff. Did you try to pursue any of that from them after that?
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, when we got done with the real world, okay, they offered us 6 weeks of therapy, I think, at that point. But when I got done with the real world, I didn't feel like I needed therapy. I was having the best time in my life. I had a free apartment for another 6 months in San Francisco. I was, you know, I was still living my best life, and
Mm.
not really feeling like I was ready to even discuss any of that yet. And it wasn't until after Pedro died, and we'd seen all the shows and everything, that I was really ready for anything. Um, but when I asked for it the first time after Real World, they said I was too late. They said, "Oh no, that was just for the first few weeks when you finished." And I said, "But I wasn't ready then." And they said, "Oh, well, we're not doing it now." So that was that. And then when I got out with Gauntlet and they were trying to get me to do the exit video and everything, I said the same thing, what about that therapy that was available before? I'm obviously going through a really tough time. And they said no. And they didn't pay me. And I said, "Well, you're not getting your interview."
It's just how it works, right? Don't give me my therapy, you don't get your interview. Keep it moving.
I felt like I'd given them enough, really. I mean, exposing myself to that extent was enough.
Yeah.
And I mean, who wants that? I mean, nobody wants to see themselves angry. I don't want to see myself angry and acting like that and shouting at people. That's horrible. That's horrible. That's like the the worst part of me that could ever be that came out.
Well,
So
I've been saying for a while that I think there should be like a default set in place mental health post show, post filming, post production, whatever you want to call it, environment for the cast once they get off of shows. Like they should go into some
mm,
bubble that's not normal life, but it's not like isolation either. A more controlled environment, more controlled environment with less people. So that way, before making that like harsh transition back into like a normal life, they at least have like some acclimation.
it was so hard coming off the real world and going back into normal life, going back into college, and trying to get a job at 22 and being in college. I mean, I moved to Santa Barbara, and I remember getting a job in Lazy Acres, one of the health food stores, big, health food supermarket kind of store. And I was on the till, and my till line was longer than anybody else's every day. And people would just get in my line because they recognized me from the show, and they would talk to me about that. And they would be like, "Oh, what are you doing in here? Are you studying for a part?" Like they thought I was actually studying, like actors do. Like, "Oh, she's just working in a supermarket because she's going to have a role where she
Yeah.
plays like she's working in a supermarket." No, I'm working in a supermarket to pay my bills.
Got to make money whichever way you can do it. It's the name of the game.
I only worked there a couple of months. I couldn't handle it. So stuff like that, it was really hard. Um, because people then they thought of you a little bit like you were a movie star.
Yeah.
They did. I had people chase me down. I remember being at a Chili Peppers concert with friends, and we were in the VIP section, which was all fenced off. And we'd left to go and get beers, and they didn't even know. My friends didn't even know I was on the Real World. I hadn't even told them. And we went out to get beers and we came back, and then all of a sudden we just heard all this screaming, "Joe! It's Joe from the Real World! Joe!" People were I started walking faster. I was in front carrying two beers. We were all double fisted. And my friends were just like, their faces were priceless. You couldn't imagine what they were, They were like, "What is going on? Why is everybody screaming your name? We're at a Chili Peppers concert. Like, why are
Yeah.
they screaming for you?" They were like crammed. Like, we got into the VIP bit again, and they were like trying to get up the fence. That was
Wow.
the most kind of mob thing that I ever experienced, but it was really wild. Yeah, Joe from the real world.
Well, maybe some of that'll happen once this video is up virtually for you in terms of maybe once people are. I'm
You
just
know
kidding.
what? I'm only doing this for you, Mike, because I didn't want to expose myself again. But you are such a likable person that I just couldn't let you down.
Oh,
And
thank
that's
you.
the honest truth.
Well, you're
That
likable
is the
too,
honest truth.
Joe. I'm glad, and I hope that, and I'm sure once this is out and people, are gonna enjoy this thoroughly. And this is exactly what I wanted out of this. I know from talking to you this last half year, I see the person that you are, and I'm hoping that once this is out there, that people have the same sentiments that I do. And of course,
Oh,
you and I are gonna remain in touch. And then you're gonna get filled in on all the other craziness that's going on in my life. So
I got
yeah,
to get out to New York to eat vegan Krispy Kremes with you.
me, you, and John. If when
Me,
John
you, and
sees
John.
this,
I mean, there's so much vegan food in New York, man. I would love to have a trip. I'll get my happy cow app out and we'll just eat our way around New York.
that sounds good to me. All right. I'll let you know when this is out. We'll see. I don't know what time it's. 10:14 over here by me, so I would assume that's what, 5? No, not 5. 5, is it
We're
5? 3.
3:15.
3:15 over by you. All right, so we'll see what time this gets out, and hopefully, maybe you'll still be awake when I first put this out. But again, thank you for your time today, Joe. I had a fun time
And I
chatting
hope
with
none of this gets me into any trouble.
you.
You
No.
better.
All right.
I just feel like I've said some naughty things, but I haven't really. I've been honest. I've been honest, and I've tried to be fair. And I've tried to be fair to production, and I've tried to be fair to the cast and to myself more than most of all. So,
Yeah.
um, and it's been lovely talking to you.
Lovely talking to you too, Joe. All right. I'll text you once we're off this, of course, and have a great rest of your day.
I will. Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye, Joe.
Bye.
Thank you.